Hey, everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank y'all for joining us on this beautiful Monday afternoon. I'm going to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting of May 9, 2022. It's 2:04 p.m. And Councilmember Seeking, since you were victorious over the weekend with your road race, you have the honor of leading us into an invocation or a moment of silence. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A short prayer, if I might. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we join together under the guise of public safety, let us remember those who are less fortunate, who need our help and protection, and endeavor to do everything we can every day to make the lives of those around us that much better. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Councilmember Seeking's got one of the most interesting awards in a road race that he showed me the other day. It's an alligator head.
Oh, yeah?
I traveled my way up Highway 41 into deep Berkeley County to Jamestown and ran in the Hellhole Swamp 5K. And somehow I must have gotten a little wind at my back. I ended up finishing third.
Wow.
And the awards for the top three were literally an alligator head. But that's part of it. Well, there's a couple of great parts that I'll get on the meeting. The alligator head is really good. If you finish in the top three, you then get to participate in the parade, the Hellhole Swamp Parade, which is held right after, which was a complete blast. So it was a fun day up in Jamestown. And the last part of the puzzle was that the two guys who beat me, their ages collectively is less than half my full age.
Wow.
And he is very proud of that, by the way.
I am very proud of that. I think I just qualified for the Berkeley High School cross country team. So if I'm missing in action, you can find me up there.
And this was not a Lacoste shirt. This was a real alligator head, I'm betting.
Oh, it's a real alligator head. Yes, sir. It is yet to be let into the house at 29 Montague Street. Let me just say that.
Well, the next time we get an invite, you have to show us off your alligator head.
I'll do it.
Hellhole Swamp. I love
Yes. Love that name. It's part of the Low Country lore.
Really something. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Seeking. So we'll next entertain a motion to approve the April 11th, 2022.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, Chief Courier, you've got the first two items. Item number 3 is a fire department approval of regional partners automatic aid agreement to guide operations of the following fire departments: Charleston, North Charleston, James Island, St. Andrews, Johns Island, and Mount Pleasant. So Chief Courier, you want to enlighten us on that agreement?
Yes, sir. So basically, this is an update of the agreement that was signed in 2012. It's the aid agreement that all the area fire departments sign on to so that when there's an emergency, regardless of jurisdiction, the closest units for the emergency are dispatched automatically without having to ask anybody. The big change to this agreement is that when the original agreement was put in place in 2012, Mount Pleasant was not a part of the auto aid group. But with this new agreement, Mount Pleasant is going to sign on and be a part of the group. So all the area fire departments will be a part.
Fire knows no boundaries.
Pardon?
Fire knows no boundaries sometimes, but jurisdiction is in. So
Exactly. So
right.
This will get the quickest resources in place with no delay.
Excellent. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 3.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second. If I didn't get counted as the first.
Any further discussion? Any questions for the chief? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. The next item with Chief Courier is a fire department approval to authorize the department to enter in a MOU with Berkeley County Emergency Management to install and monitor a weather station at our station number 18. Anything?
So, pardon?
Yes. It seems that much self-explanatory, but go ahead, Chief.
It is Station 18 is on Daniel Island, and we have weather stations across the city of Charleston. It helps us with, particularly in storm response. We measure the wind speed. We figure out when it's safe to go across bridges, when it's not safe, when we can respond, when we can't respond. So Berkeley County wanted to add one at Station 18.
Sounds like a good idea. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 4.
Move for approval.
There's a second.
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 Any further questions or discussions for Chief Curry? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Chief. We'll come back to you in a few seconds. We're on to 2 police department items. Item number 5, a police department approval of an agreement between the city and Charleston Dorchester Mental Health Center defines responsibilities incumbent upon both parties as part of the previously approved Connect and Protect grant. And I see Steve Rumlin. Steve, this sounds familiar, like we've done this exercise once before.
Yes, so the council approved the acceptance of this grant back at the end of January. It's for a mental health clinician, a peer support specialist, and crisis intervention training. We do have a mental health clinician in the police department currently that focuses on domestic violence and victims of crime. This mental health clinician would be more of a person that's out in the field working on crisis intervention to try and prevent people that are having mental health crisis from becoming engaged in the criminal justice system, basically offering them services in the field to get them to the right place where the police aren't necessary in the intervention. So this would be more of a person in the field, and this was already approved, and the finances and all that. So if there's any questions, I can try and answer those. My grant people kind of left me today, so I had to get up on this pretty quick.
Councilmember Shealy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, I'm certainly, in favor of this, and Jennifer Roberts does a great job and works with our city so well, and serves on our Health and Wellness Advisory Committee as well. But I just had a couple of questions. When I was reading through it, it said this position will provide services up to 40 hours a week. And I was just wondering if that should be up to, or should that be services of 40 hours a week? And if it doesn't, does that allow that person flexibility where they're not working 40 hours a week, I guess?
Yeah, I think the intent is 40 hours a week, and I'm not sure. I didn't catch that the first time around on this contract, so we can certainly amend that. I can get with them and amend that to make sure we're clear on what the hours are.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I guess the other question was, it said it would start April 1st, but I guess that date will change as well. Is that correct?
Right. It would go into effect at the time of signing, so it'd be a year from that date.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or any concerns? Do we need to make a motion to amend the document? Or can we just accept it as is, legal counsel?
I'll move as is.
Okay. Yeah, there's a motion to adopt as is, and if we need to make some tweaks, Steve can get back with us at a later
They'll
date.
clarify that with them, right, Steve? Yeah.
Right. I think that's the intent, is the 40 hours. So I'm not sure how that language came to be. So.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? Do we have a second, by the way?
Second.
Okay. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next one is a police department approval of a 2023 coronavirus emergency supplement funding program for after the fact submission in the amount of $217,735 for computers and ancillary equipment to have 15 police cruisers with mobile computer systems. It was due May 6th, so it's just sort of after the fact as well. Steve.
Right. So we wanted to submit that, and the intent, if we are awarded that, would be to use it for those 15 computers for our vehicles.
And there's no match with this, I understand as well.
Not in the first year. If we decide to continue with those services, there would be a cost after that first year.
Okay. Is there a motion? Mayor, you have a question?
Well, I wanted Steve to also explain that I believe these are the units. They're more than just a computer. They're like the combination with the car camera as well. They're like a combo unit. What do we call them? MDTs or something?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's more than just a computer. This interfaces with other equipment in the car.
So let me ask one more question, if you don't mind. If we get these 15, I know we've been converting a lot of our police cars over to this new system. How many more do we have to go to where we're basically all our units have the same technology?
I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but I certainly can get that information.
Yeah.
I see that Chief Reynolds is trying to log on.
Yeah.
Mayor, this is Cassandra, sorry.
Yes.
Hey, Cassandra.
Mayor and Councilmember Shade, I spoke to the lieutenant that's over this program in reference to this, and we're probably, if we continue the replacement cycle like we have been with Wes and his team, looking at the next two years being completely at that point.
Great. Terrific. We've been making progress. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
A lot of progress. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good seeing you, Chief Reynolds.
Thanks.
Okay, we need a motion to approve item number 6.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions for Steve or Cassandra or Chief Reynolds or anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Now, Chief Courier, we finally get to you and Shannon on an update of the fire department. So, little rip.
All right, let me share my screen. Let's see here. That's not working.
We got something.
Good. Okay. Well, let's go with it then. So let me back up to the first slide. This is just the update on the fire department. And what I have to say is a lot of things are going really well in the fire department. And the challenges that we'll outline are somewhat complex and there's no quick fixes. But I also think that you have an awareness of everything I'm about to say. So the current issues that we face, morale is a big one, but I also believe that morale is driven by a couple of things, COVID being one of them, pay and retention being another. Our vacancy rate right now is, we have 25 people in a fire academy, but we have 50 vacancies in the operations division. So we still have 25 vacancies we have to fill. We have our call volume going up. We have the overtime issues that were generated primarily due to COVID and the reduction in those line items. I'll talk about it in a couple of minutes, but we have a serious lack of diversity in the department. We have a leadership vacuum. Of all the chiefs that have been promoted in place in the last couple of years, 67% of them have been promoted by me in the last 3.5 years. We're currently revamping our strategic plan, and the last bullet point is facilities. And we've been talking about facilities for several years. I do think that we have a very positive movement on facilities, and I'll outline that in a minute. So, as I mentioned before, I think the number one issue that we are facing in the department right now is a morale issue. And it comes down to COVID fatigue more than anything. And I know I'm not saying anything that doesn't impact the rest of the city workforce also. But we're over 2 years into COVID, and I'm so glad that we're starting to return to normal. You can start to feel the tension relax a little bit in the fire department. But the COVID mandate or the vaccine mandate, we have 50 firefighters in the department who were impacted by that. So that's affected morale. I believe every council member on the meeting today, including the mayor, has heard more than enough about the pay and retention and inflation in the fire department. Now, COVID drove us to be in silos. And basically, the best way for us to connect with our firefighters is to make sure that they have face time with leadership. Obviously, that decreased during the pandemic, so we're turning that around now. And with morale, obviously the communication from leadership, we really strive to be open, honest, and transparent. We try to make sure that people in the department have most of the information that I have, so that even if they're not driving the decisions of the department, they have an awareness of those decisions. So we're trying to build a trusting culture within the entire fire department. If I move over to the operations vacancy rate, in 2018, we had a 21% vacancy rate. To put that into perspective, when I was hired on July 30th, 2018, we had 74 vacancies in the operations division. So this vacancy rate reflects 21% at the end of the calendar year. The vacancy rate in 2020 had dropped to 9.3, but you start to see it trending back up. We're at 13% now. The interesting thing is that most separations for the fire department personnel occur within 0 to 4 years, followed very quickly by 5 to 9 years. The obvious question is, what is a normal vacancy rate? And this isn't scientific, but my prior experience has told me that in a fire department the size of the Charleston Fire Department, we should expect about a 5% vacancy rate year after year. So we should be losing 20 or 21 people per year. The other issue that we're facing is a rising call volume. Obviously, when COVID hit and the population was less mobile, our call volume went down. So we've seen an 11% increase from 2020 to 2021. And right now we're on target to see about another 10% increase for the current calendar year. So the things that are trending positively. One of the things the fire department uses as a benchmark on the delivery of service is the Insurance Services Office rating. It's a rating from 1 to 10, with 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. And Charleston has retained its Class 1 rating. That's important because ratings at about 5 to down to 1 positively impact business insurance rates in the city of Charleston. So the 3 main criteria that are evaluated are the dispatching system, the water distribution system, and fire protection. Obviously, 2 of the 3 of those we don't have any control over, but we enjoy a really good relationship with all the other partners. Again, we've retained the Class 1. If you drop down to the next bullet point,
Chief.
Yes.
By the way, you're not advancing. We still have the front page of your PowerPoint presentation.
Well, that's not good. Let's see here.
There you go.
All right, let's see here. Let me try this again. Well, I am having a little bit of technical difficulty on this one, so I apologize.
That's okay.
You had it up there,
On the
right?
previous
before.
screen, you had it up.
Yeah, and then just sort of faded off.
It changed slides, Chief, and then it went back to your desktop. Can you just click on PowerPoint there at the bottom? Maybe it'll come back up.
Let's see what we got here.
Maybe not. There it is.
All right.
Well, you're all over the board now.
Yes, slide it back to the right, middle of the screen. And
What's
then
that?
Slide your PowerPoint back to the right, middle of the screen.
Almost there, Chief.
How's that?
No, you're half.
There you go. There you go.
I stopped there.
All right.
Okay.
I had it on the wrong screen. Now, you know what? This is just not working for me. Let's see here.
Click on the slideshow tab at the top. It should say like present or, yeah, to your left, come to your left.
Hold on a second. Let's see. You stop the share. If it would be easier, I can just talk through the issues.
Why don't you just talk through the issue and then you can forward to me the PowerPoint presentation afterwards.
Absolutely. Okay. So I was talking about the insurance service office. We've retained our class 1, which is an important component for fire service delivery. Another thing that is important for the fire department is that the accrediting body for a fire department is the Center for Public Safety Excellence. So there are very few fire departments in the country that enjoy accreditation through the Center for Public Safety Excellence, as well as an ISO Class 1. Charleston Fire Department is one that really has gone above and beyond and has both of those designations. So that's a very positive trend. The long-range planning for the fire department is positive. We're currently engaging in a project to make sure that we can forecast our needs and our issues for 10 to 15 years. And it's a living document. We share components of it, say with BFRC, to make sure that they have an awareness well before we need different apparatus, or the Parks Department, so they know exactly what station projects we need to move forward and in what year. Another thing that I would point to as a very positive component is the interagency collaboration we've got, particularly with the Charleston Police Department. Now, we have very good relationships with all our area fire departments. However, the police department, it surprises me that a police department and a fire department in other areas of the country actually sometimes don't get along all that well. And I think that this is a testament to the leadership that Chief Reynolds brings to the table. After Chief Reynolds, we've got Chief Thompson, we've got Chief Walker, just an entire team. And I think when leadership sets the tone, that collaboration and cordial attitude is expected, good things happen. The best example I can give for that is the Palms fire that we had a couple of months ago. The success of that incident can't be taken for granted. There were no injuries and there were no deaths to any civilians. Given the magnitude of that fire, that is incredibly, incredibly good news. Quite simply, that would not have been possible if the Charleston Police Department and the Charleston Fire Department didn't have such a good working relationship. So those are really good things that are happening for us. So the question becomes, what still needs to happen? We still have to control our overtime costs. So when COVID reduced the amount of funding that we had in fiscal 21, we had to retool the way we approached particularly our special teams. But what we find now is we have a training gap with our hazardous materials team, our urban search and rescue team, and our marine team in particular. So we're having to find ways, even with overtime starting to rebound, we're having to find ways to, one, entice new members into the team. We're having to find ways to retain the membership that we've got. And we're trying to find ways to make sure that we can bridge that training gap that was created just because of the pandemic. Another big challenge is the fire department pay plan. Again, I believe everybody has heard about this a lot, but the pay plan was implemented in 2018. When I came into the chief's position in July of 2018, I came in and the assumption that I made was that the implementation of the pay plan involved a pay adjustment for Charleston's firefighters. And what I came to realize much later on is that a pay structure was put in place, but it didn't necessarily come with any kind of a pay adjustment or a pay study to go along with it. I think that starts to paint the picture for where we are today with our firefighters. Obviously, it's an understatement to say that our firefighters have been vocal about pay and retention issues. I do think that the proper issue to be talking about is the cost of living in the Charleston area. I think that's really what's driving this conversation. And obviously, there's the pandemic, there are inflation issues. But at some point, I was talking to a couple of different council members, and I was talking about the concept of the fluctuating work week that firefighters work. And they work 2 pay periods of what we call a long schedule, and they work 1 pay period of what we call a short schedule. And what it does is it results in different pay at different points in the course of a month. So a beginning firefighter with a high school education, once that firefighter gets out of the fire academy, the net pay that that firefighter receives in the course of a month is right at $2,000. It might be $2,100, might be $2,200, but it's right at $2,000. And given the cost of living in the Charleston area now, that basically is rent. That's basically rent for one of Charleston's firefighters. That doesn't take into account any food. That doesn't take into account car insurance, car payments, nothing like that. And while I understand that we can't necessarily control that the housing market, I am incredibly sympathetic to the fact that our firefighters want to live in the community. They want to do a good job, but they're finding it increasingly difficult to make that happen. So that is one of the morale issues that we have going through the fire department right now. Going on to leadership in the department, we have 25 chief officers, and 67% of them have been promoted in the last 3.5 years. That was one of the things that was surprising when I came through the door, but I also knew that as we promoted these people into leadership positions, we were going to have a leadership vacuum. We were going to have a training issue. So I will say that most of the problems or most of the issues that we have in the fire department right now, it's not how does the fire get extinguished, and it's not how well do we do CPR, and it's not what's the status of the Marine team. It's how do we relate to each other, and how do we talk to each other, and how do we engage in difficult conversations and get to resolutions that either we can all agree on, or even if we don't agree on them, how can they be cordial during the conversation. So that's a huge issue that we're working on right now. Another issue is the diversity of the fire department, or really it's the lack of diversity in the fire department. So just in Charleston Fire, we are 92% white male. To make a comparison, the community is 72% white. So we obviously, if we want to reflect the community that we serve, we have to start doing things differently in the city of Charleston. So in 2021, with the mayor's support, I combined 2 vacant firefighting positions, and we created one position that's a diversity and recruitment position. So we've teamed them up with the recruiter that we already had in place, and we're focusing on a couple of different things. We're focusing on increasing the diversity of the Charleston Fire Department to eventually reflect the community that we serve, but we're also trying to make sure that the talent we hire is local talent, with the thought process that the more of a local flavor we can add to the fire department, the better chance we have of retaining these firefighters. So I established the position. I did not establish a budget with the position. We've been carving the budget out of different divisions in the fire department. We do have a budget request of sorts that I've talked to Rick Giroux about. It's about $64,000 that it's my hope that we'll be able to fund through ARPA funding later in the year. But obviously, this is going to have to be a sustained effort in the fire department if we expect to make any real headway. Moving on to facilities. The fire department's training facility, its logistics facility, and its shop facility are all on Milford Street. So we all know that eventually those things will go away in the next couple of years. So we're working with the Parks Department to make sure that what we need in the new municipal operations complex will be enough to take the fire department several years into the future with our training. As far as immediate station needs, we've got Station 23 on Johns Island. We've already got the land for that. We have the architect chosen, and there's an upcoming budget request for next year for 15 additional firefighters to staff a ladder company that would go into that firehouse. And then the following year would be a request for the other 15 firefighters that we'll need to put an engine company in service. We have applied for a grant, a federal grant, that would provide those firefighters at no cost, but we haven't been awarded that grant yet. The other big area of concern as it relates to fire protection is the Cainhoy area, and it's quite frankly exploding in growth. So after long delays, we're finally in a position to rebuild fire station number 20, which will take the facility that is in the worst condition in the Charleston Fire Department and actually give them a state-of-the-art facility for years to come. Further into Cainhoy, we have plans for Station 22. BFRC is already aware that we'll need 30 firefighters for that. We have Station 24, which we're working on a land donation for several years down the road. We'll just be able to have the land set aside so that when we need that firehouse in place, we'll be able to do that. So we are putting plans in place to make sure that the issues in Cainhoy are addressed in a proactive manner. As far as the rest of the facilities in the fire department, one of the focuses of the fire department of my leadership has been facilities. And that was initially at the direction of the mayor. It's been further honed with the direction of Councilmember Shade. But what I would say is that as we stand here in 2022, in comparison to 2018, so many of our facilities have improved in the span of 3.5 years. Station 6 on Cannon Street has received a complete renovation. It's beautiful. Station 8 on Hugie Street will undergo a renovation. I could go through. Station 13 on James Island has received a complete renovation. Station 7 on James Island will receive a complete renovation. In West Ashley, obviously Station 11, after many delays, but Station 11 is in a new facility that is absolutely beautiful. Station 12 in West Ashley is undergoing a small renovation that's on Old Town Road. Station 14 in Carolina Bay has had significant roof work to improve the quality of life for those firefighters. Station 16 has undergone a small renovation. On Daniel Island, Station 18, we have a renovation planned. So the face of the Charleston Fire Department facilities wise over the last 3.5 years really has changed dramatically. Now, I've been working with Councilmember Shade to still outline some of the things that need to be done. We still have work to be done in different firehouses across the city, but things are so much better. As I close out, I will say that there are plenty of good things occurring in the Charleston Fire Department. All of our upper level ranks in the fire department are either filled or they will be filled in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Right now, we have one vacancy at the assistant chief level And aside from that, every rank from the captain level through fire chief has been filled. And that was not the case a couple of years ago. I already talked about our facilities and the positive trend. One thing you'll note is that in this entire presentation, or in this entire discussion, I haven't really touched on our emergency responses. And that's because if there's one thing you do not have to worry about, it's the quality of our response and the professionalism of our firefighters. Our response times are where they need to be. When we get to emergencies, the time it takes to bring a fire under control is very good. The time it takes to initiate CPR is very good. So those are all things that you don't have to worry about. We're developing partnerships. I already talked about the partnership with Charleston Police Department. Our area fire departments, we have very strong relationships with. We are operating in complex environments very well. Hazardous materials, aside from the team retention issues that I talked about, our operations at hazardous materials, building collapse, maritime is all very good. I would say in closing that the pay and retention issue is our number one issue to tackle. And I know HR is working on that. I would say that in the 3.5 years that I've been in the Charleston Fire Department, we've lost, or we've trained rather, 105 new firefighters. So the fire department is right at 400 personnel. If I can't retain firefighters, then I'm in a constant loop of training entry level, which means I can't ever get on to the work of advancing the skill set of our existing firefighters. One thing that's really important to know is that in the firefighting world, and I think it's probably the same in the police department, but for firefighters, a 5-year firefighter is typically more valuable to me than a 1-year firefighter. And that's not to say on a personal level that I'm trying to disparage the 1-year firefighter, but experience really does matter in this profession. So the more we can retain our personnel, the more we can quit losing them from 0 to 4 years, the better off this fire department's going to be for years to come. I just need to be able to retain them so I can advance their skill set. And that is the fire department. I'm happy to take any questions.
Chief, thank you for that, and I appreciate the thoroughness of it. And I will say that the state of our fire department being on good footing is falls on your shoulders. Thank you for your leadership for the past several years. You have been a stabilizer, and you have, and I think it's been a wonderful thing. I know you inherited a department that had low morale when you got here, and you inherited a department that had several facility issues and pay issues as well. So what you've been tackling is not new issues to be tackling, but it seems like an ongoing, but you are tackling them, and we're making good progress with that. I have a few questions before I turn it over to my members of my committee. I just want to clarify, because I was trying to take up notes. I think you said earlier we are at, and I want to make sure I got these numbers right. We have 74 vacancies, and that equates to what percentage?
In 2018,
2018,
we had
74 vacancies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So
and that was equivalent to what percentage of vacancies?
21%, I believe it was.
And today, where are we?
If we count the recruits that we have in training, which they'll come out next month, so I feel comfortable counting them, we're at 9.3% for a vacancy rate. That's right at 25 or 26 vacancies. We have another fire academy that will start later in the summer, and that won't quite get us to our full complement, but it will get us awfully close.
Okay, so we were at 21% with 74 vacancies. We're down to 9% with about 23 vacancies.
Yes, sir.
All right. One more question before I turn it over. I know the pay issue is a big issue that we've been wrestling with, but we'll circle back around with that. But Station 12, which is in my district, and I pass by it every day.
Yes, sir.
It seems like there's very little going on there. So what is the status with that station?
So most of the work has been done, and there's an issue with the flooring that came up rather late. So we're working with Parks right now to just get the flooring issue resolved. I think it should just be a couple of more weeks and we'll have those firefighters back in that firehouse.
Okay. And one more question before I let you loose. You and I have talked about the utility of a board of fire masters. Any research into that and usefulness of having that reinstated?
So I had a good long discussion with retired Assistant Chief Raymond Lloyd, and Chief Lloyd retired in 2018 with just a couple of weeks shy of 45 years on the fire department. So if there was anybody that I was going to ask about this, it would be him. His comment to me was that his experience with the Board of Fire Masters is that it became a very political position. They were appointed politically, and the role of the fire masters evolved to the point where they were trying to dictate operations on the fire ground, and they were having considerable input concerning who the fire chief should be or what promotions should take place. So I think in the iteration of the Board of Fire Masters that went away several years ago, it may not be useful for the Charleston Fire Department in 2022. What I do think would be useful is some type of citizens advisory committee for the department. And if we wanted to term it the Board of Fire Masters, I think there's several positive things that we can take out of that old structure and turn it into a new structure. But one of the more positive things I can think of is that firefighters are fairly rigid in thought. And if we take something like the diversity issue that we're facing in the department, if it's only firefighters who are putting a lot of thought into trying to solve the diversity issue, then we're missing out on a huge perspective. And if we have a department that is lacking in diversity, if we don't tap into resources outside the Charleston Fire Department, the only perspectives we're going to get are from that lack of diversity. So I think a version of the Board of Fire Masters could be useful for us if we just retool it a bit.
Very good. Okay. I did not want to monopolize you. So I just wanted to make sure I got those points taken care of. So
Yes,
members of the committee, questions, comments for the chief?
If I could just jump in really quick, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief, for your
Yes, sir.
report. When you get that slide deck back on your screen, can you share it with us? Because I just think there's a lot of good information in there that'd be helpful for us.
I'll have it to you in 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Councilmember Shealy, any questions or comments? Or
Yeah, well, thank you, Chief. Appreciate everything. Appreciate all of your leadership. I'm not sure, I was going to ask you, did you mention Station 16 in there? I may have missed it, but that's actually called Plantation Road too.
I meant to mention it. If I didn't, I apologize. So that one just completed a small renovation. The real long-term plan for that facility is that it's going to have to be replaced. And the facility itself is deteriorating, but the lot is not big enough to allow for the firehouse to be torn down and then a replacement firehouse built. So we are actively pursuing trying to get land for a replacement firehouse. And I don't have an update on the land search, but I did hear the other day we had a couple of promising leads.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, any questions or comments or observations?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chief Courier. I really appreciate your leadership, and I certainly hear about the challenges. You mentioned that maybe we've heard more than enough. My ears are open to hear even more because I appreciate that the conflict or the challenge between rising costs here in Charleston, particularly on housing and firefighters' pay. Frankly, it applies to all city employees' pay, given the cost of housing in our area, and it's a big issue even beyond the fire department. So my hat's off to you to come walk in here with almost 80 vacancies, and as you said, with the end of the summer, with another class, you will be close to a full complement. I think that's quite an accomplishment, Chief, and my hat's off to you. I thank you also for your transparency in acknowledging our challenge with diversity in the department and your efforts to address that. And we need to continue those efforts. You have my support, and I think this council's support. We will be meeting this Thursday. As you know, I'd asked HR to review all the salaries within a 90-day period. The HR committee meeting is set for this coming Thursday, where we'll discuss that. I think my colleagues here on the committee and on council are going to have to seriously deal with our pay plan, not just in the fire department, but citywide. We did so last year. We're going to have to do it again. I mean, the labor market is such that keeping employees, getting them trained, paying them enough so that they can afford to live here, it's a real challenge for our organization as a whole. So I look forward to that discussion on Thursday, and look forward to hearing even more feedback. I don't think we have heard enough of, and we have some things to report this coming week. If you want to get a citizens advisory committee going again, Chief, let's move forward and get that done. I think that would be a very positive thing. Will involve more community members. I think it's been very positive for the police department. They, of course, had a different set of challenges and needs, which led them to have a police advisory committee, but it's been positive, and it also led to support organization called Lens that has been supportive of our police department. And I think having a similar organization on the fire side would be a very positive thing. So A-OK, let's move forward with that. Thanks for all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, one more thing. I don't want to bite into Shannon's time. He's been very patient and hanging in with us. The one other comment that you made about facilities was the Milford Street. In my conversations with some of our other senior staff members, it's okay from your perspective that we can sort of cut you out from the rest of what the complex that's at Milford Street, so that you just need to have, I think you mentioned training, maintenance, and one other component that you need to have together. If we separate you from those other issues that the city has at Milford Street, that would suffice for you. You don't need to be interconnected with some other departments.
No, you're correct. I don't need to be interconnected. I think for the best operation of the fire department, and this is long-term in the next 30 to 50 years, if we could condense all the fire department operations except for the fire stations, if we could condense all our operations into one complex, that would be the most beneficial situation. But I do realize, especially if you talk about training, obviously we have to burn things to train firefighters, and you're going to want the fire department training component somewhat removed from the rest of the city complex, because if not, you're going to get smoke in your office building, and you don't want that. So it would be okay to carve us out somewhere else.
Okay. Chief, let's get back together with the Citizens Advisory Group. I like the idea of keeping it the name, the Board of Fire Masters. I think that has a historical component to it. But I think what we're talking about with retooling it in its mission is going to be the critical part of that.
Yes, sir. Glad to do it.
All right, Shannon, we'll jump right into you right now. So thank you, Chief.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the committee. Thanks for having me. I will be brief but thorough, and happy to take your questions at the end of it. Just like the fire department, emergency management's got a lot of great things happening right now. You'll probably recall Mr. Mike Tito moved on to other things with a new career, and we've since hired a new staff member in Shannon Whitehead. You'll likely see emails from her in the future about some of the weather alerts and warnings as they come to us. We're approaching that rainy season now. It's spring and summer coming. So Shannon Whitehead is her name. She's coming to us by way of FEMA. Phenomenal staff member already. We've got her training up very quickly on operations in Charleston, and things are going really well with her. The Cooper River Bridge Run was highly successful. I mean, the numbers this year were not quite back to the normal numbers that you would see from years past, approaching 40,000. We're probably about half strength. But I'll suspect that if as long as things continue to trend in terms of the pandemic and all that, maybe next year we see even larger numbers and start to feel even more at normal speed, normal strength. Speaking of COVID, we're looking at, in terms of sheltering and hurricanes and things like that, continuing on with that same flavor of things getting back to the way they used to be. But one of the elements that I'm looking at right now in emergency management is rebuilding our incident management team. You'll recall that in a pre-COVID environment, we had everybody stacked up in the MEOC for operations. Looks like we can start sort of getting back to that. We've lost some key folks in that incident management team just through normal attrition, people moving on. So we're doing a recruiting effort right now with city staff to bring some new talent into that MEOC to help us sort of prepare for, respond to, and recover from the hurricanes if we happen to see one this year. We have an earthquake exercise coming up that's being led by Charleston County. We're going to engage with that fully. In fact, we'll do a partial activation of the MEOC on June 1st to support that earthquake exercise. We are still working on some plans. You'll recall several months ago, we talked about an emergency operations plan with you. With the staff of 3, we continue to try to work on those annexes. Most recently dialed in on earthquakes, as we've got the exercise coming, so we've been focusing on that. Additional plans that we're looking at: hazard mitigation plan, a continuity of operations plan, and a recovery plan. We had several months ago now, we had a Homeland Security Summit hosted by the Mills House, where we spent a lot of time talking about recovery from an emergency or disaster that would hit the Charleston area. And so really want to devote some time and energy over 2023 to nailing down a recovery plan for us and just sort of strengthening our preparedness as a city. Looks like I've got maybe 3 minutes left here, but in terms of hurricane status, I think this year, it only takes one, as we all know, but it's about looking about like what it normally does, maybe an average to slightly above average season. So we've reactivated the Hurricane Task Force. You'll remember a few years ago with COVID, I wanted to sort of manage the COVID response, but also have a few key folks that were working just on the hurricane element. And that's what we've already started doing. We've reviewed our bus stop locations around the city for evacuations. We're reviewing our citywide employee berthing and feeding plans. We, again, are working with law enforcement on the sheltering security. Happy to report that that Charleston County space availability for shelters has now gotten back up to pre-COVID numbers. So we're in the neighborhood of 3,500 available spaces across 6 shelters in Charleston County. And those shelters are good for a category 3 or below. And as we all know, it'll be based on the needs of, our citizens in terms of how many of those are open. But that largely lies with Charleston County. And then of course, Berkeley County has several thousand as well. So we're getting back to some pretty good shape there in terms of shelter space availability. The Sandbag locations have been reviewed and are ready to go. I think we're up to about 90,000 sandbags available, with 20,000 at James Island. Our debris management sites have been approved by DHEC, and our hurricane outreach has already started. The staff was out this weekend at a local event on Saturday, passing out hurricane guides and those sorts of things. Of course, we grow every year, and we have folks that come into the city or into the surrounding areas that have never seen or experienced a hurricane like a lot of us have. And so they may not have the education in terms of what the real risk factors are, right? With like storm surge and those kinds of things. So when that evacuation order is given, the message is really, button up the house, get your stuff packed, and get to your chosen evacuation location. So with our whopping staff of 3, that is what we're working on right now. As you would expect, post bridge run, we immediately shift right into hurricane season and get going on that. So there you are. It's 2:59, and I could probably talk for the next 3 hours about plan development and my 3-year plan for emergency management, but let's leave it there, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Shannon, that was a very quick Reader's Digest run through, and appreciate that. There's still, and I know you and I have talked about this constantly, there's still no facilities on the peninsula available for evacuation sites. That's FEMA requirements. I know that's a problem. I would love to have that modified so that folks who live on the peninsula have a place to go in case of emergency. The one other question I would have for you, this sounds kind of small, but when we have the sandbag distribution sites, and we've had them in my backyard, literally at Sumar Street in the past, hopefully you will be needing to look for a different site besides Sumar Street in the immediate future. And I would also just encourage you to have sort of either a team captain or a team leader of some sort. I go out there in the past several years where we had these sort of directing where the sand is supposed to be headed and sort of organizing, making sure that we've got some kind of level of coordination out there at the actual site. So I would just ask you to look at that. I know we bring in all different staff members from different departments, recreations out there, and a host of other folks are pitching in and helping. But it would help, I think, to some other level, make sure we're coordinated a little bit better at those sites. Hopefully, we don't need anything for 2022. Keep our fingers crossed. But in that likelihood, I would ask you to sort of look at what happens at that site. And I can share with you my experience being on site for that for the past several years. So, all right. So, any questions, comments, input from my committee members from what Shannon had to offer us? Okay. Well, Mayor, thank you. We've got to hop on to a 3 o'clock real estate committee meeting. Shannon, thank you all. Chief Courier, Steve, Rumlin, thank you all for y'all's very prompt input on all this stuff. And we'll be see you around. So send us that, Chief Courier, don't forget to send us that PowerPoint presentation.
He already did.
Already did.
Already done.
Well, there you go. All right.
All right.
Boom.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Hopping on to another meeting. We're adjourned.